This is the third film in the X Pearl trilogy, whatever you want to call it. I'm in Salad and I saw Maxine. It is written and directed by Ty West, and if you haven't seen this movie, I will spoil it for you. This movie comes from a very strange trilogy. There's X, and then there's Pearl, and then there's Maxine. But we're following up on the events from X. And Pearl is just kind of a introduction to who Pearl was, who the old woman was in X. So it's kind of like a prequel trilogy kind of thing in that one movie, and then everything else takes place in real time. It's pretty interesting. I do think you have to be somewhat familiar with the events of X in order to watch this movie and really truly appreciate it. This movie follows Maxine. It's been a few months since the events of X happened, and she's like, I'm doing it. I'm doing Hollywood. I saw death in front of me, and I saw how easy it is to lose your life, so I'm going to do what I can right now. And I like that attitude of hers. In X, she stars in a porno film, and that's what she did in Hollywood. She's been doing a lot of porno films, and she got a role for Puritan 2, which is a sequel to a horror movie, which is pretty cool. She's moving up in the world. Pretty awesome stuff. This movie establishes a friendship with the guy who runs a VHS shop slash sex store slash porno store. It's a weird store. He just has a lot of VHSs there. And it's pretty cool. She's only friends with this guy. She's not friends with anybody else per se, except for a couple of girlfriends, but this is her closest friend. The couple of girlfriends that she meets along the way are because of her being in Hollywood, going to some parties, meeting them, all that fun jazz. It's all been established kind of in the past, but this is her closest friend, is the guy who runs this VHS shop. Keep him in mind for later. Something spooky happens. She gets this VHS tape that says "For Maxine," and it's from her first, not released, but first porno that happened during X. And then she's like, how did someone get this? This is crazy. And then this person's like, I'm here to implicate you on the crimes that you committed here. I'm blackmailing you. You gotta do this or else I'm gonna go tell the police. And my favorite thing about Maxine's character is she does not care. She's like, I'm just gonna focus on Puritan 2. I'm just gonna focus on hitting my role. And so she does a great audition for this. She memorized the lines and everything, delivered an authentic appearance. I also like seeing her talk to the director. The director's a woman, and she's like, yeah, we're gonna show Hollywood what's up with this movie. We're gonna make an awesome movie. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be amazing, right? I'm like, okay, cool, hype. I don't take none of this. I don't take nothing, okay? No excuses. We only have one life, so we gotta make sure our time counts. I'm like, man, I'm so in on this director. I'm with ya. However, the night before she's able to do her first ever being on the set, she encounters this maniac chasing her down, and then it's like, oh, there's some Hollywood murders going on, and this guy might be related to that. And she's being chased by this man down an alley, and you think, oh, she's gonna be helpless. You know what's awesome about her? She pulls out a gun and shoots him. Pooh, pooh. I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so cool. I love Maxine. Awesome. Right. But of course, this took a lot out of her. It made her late. And so she's like, I'm sorry. Something came up. And then the director's like, no excuses. None whatsoever. I really think she should have told her director that she was chased by a maniac man last night, and then the police are coming over trying to question her about things and take her to the station and cause her to be late. I would tell that to the director. Hey, cops had to ask me about something fishy that happened. Oh, what was the thing that happened? Oh, on the same night that you got chased down the alley, your friend also got murdered. You know, the one who ran the VHS shop? And the cops were trying to question you about it because you're friends with him. You know, play to humanity, man. Why didn't she do this? Man, I don't know why she didn't do this. She could be like, that's such a perfectly reasonable explanation for why you're late. It's because the cops pulled you into the station for some question because your friend got murdered last night. And you almost got murdered last night. But alas, she doesn't say any of this. She's just like, all right, cool. And then, you know, she just has this cool blood scene. She gets blood all over her face. It's pretty cool. And then there's this scene where she has what are those called when you have like molds over your face? Like dry molds. You put a bunch of goo over your face and it dries in 10 minutes. During this process of her just sitting there waiting for the thing to dry, she has weird hallucinations of this arm just going to grab her titties and just starts rubbing them, and it's weird, and she starts panicking and freaking out. She's like, what is going on? Ah! And she like take it off her face because it's claustrophobic and all that fun jazz. Would you do a face mold? I don't know if I would. I probably would. If face molds if it was a cool one, that'd be like cool, you know, if it was helpful. I would definitely do it like last resort unless it was necessary for me to be a face molder, but it's alright. I'm not claustrophobic particularly, but I do like breathing. So anyways, she has to pull this mold out from her face, and she's dealing with a lot of stress being on Puritan too. And then guess what happens? Things start escalating and escalating, and I think you gotta watch this movie to fully appreciate the pacing and the acting and everything about this movie. But I'm just giving you the good plot summary details. It turns out her friends were kidnapped and then murdered. And she's like, why? And she has to figure out who done did it. And she gets like a note, she goes somewhere, and she goes there, it's like, oh my goodness, this is my dad's house. And he goes to her dad's house, and guess what? The dad's crazy. The dad, guess what? He's a very religious person. He's the head of a church, I believe. I don't know what position he's in, but he's the head of a church, and he's like, you are sin. My daughter is doing sin. Man, I gotta cleanse sin from this world. Urgh. They have a big old fight, but then she gets strapped to this pole, like a wooden pole or a tree or something, and she's about to get exercised when luckily the cops are on her tail because they're like, what is up with this chick? She seems a little sus. And so the cops are just trailing behind her. They follow her to this house, and then they go to the backyard, notice that she's being exercised or about to be burned alive or burnt to the stake or something. I don't know what this freaking dad's plan is, to burn his daughter, I guess. And there's like a whole cult around this pool. It's pretty cool. And the cops come in and they do and they save Maxine. And then Maxine goes on her jolly way. Unfortunately, the woman who is the face of Puritan, the first one, she gets killed. But more importantly, she gets killed in her face, and her head gets decapitated. Her face is still in this screaming way. It's like, ah, like in the poster. And I thought it was pretty cool. But it's quite sad that she's dead. Very sad. But then they continue on production, and Maxine's like, yes, no more past is chasing me. You know that I'm gonna have an opinion about overbearing parents, specifically this one. This one seemed to force religion down her throat to the point in which she wanted to do porn. If you want to prevent your children from doing porn, here's what not to do. Make sure that they pick one religion, nothing else at all, or else you're going to get excommunicated. Also, force them to go to church every week. Force them to do Bible stuff that they might not want to do. Force them to just practice the religion. And you know, all of this fronting being such a good Christian and all that jazz, or whatever religion, it can apply to any religion actually. It's not just Christian. But if you force an ideology on somebody, especially religion, on a child, they're either perceptive to it or hard rejected. You know what? I'm thinking that that's weird. Why would this man who is so perfect, why would he create such bad things? Oh, well, he has a look over everything, and everything is in his plan. So is crime in his plan too? Is human suffering in his plan too? Well, no, that's the devil's work. Yeah, I mean, some of it is, but like, at what point are you going to quantify what is the Lord's work and what is the devil's work? Okay? Things like that is why I can't do religion. I just think too much about it to the point where I'm like, debunked. Alright, I'm just gonna go with the simple, once you're dead, everything is black, simple, easy, clean, cut. Also think about, if you're religious, eternal life. Why would you want life to be eternal? You just want life to go on forever and ever and ever, be even past infinity? That seems like a long time. Do you perceive time like that? Do you perceive time like as a human does? Or do you perceive time like you're not a human? Like 1 second is like 12 million years in heaven time. I don't know. I have all these questions that are never answered. Okay? So that's why I think you should not force religion on to your child. Also, that's the main sin that this father has committed, is to forcing religion on this child to the point where he's like, oh, you're doing sin, I must murder you and exorcise you. That's insane. Look, you can force religious morals on a child, because generally religious morals are pretty good, you know? There's some good things to teach about somebody when it comes to religion, but other things are very confusing and leave me with more questions than I have answers for. So that is my philosophy on this father here, and I really like Maxine. This is the trilogy ender. You know, I really like seeing Maxine's character. In the first one, she's very innocent. She just wants to get away from her father, and so she goes to this abandoned house, or seemingly abandoned house, but it was actually somebody else's property. They just had a separate house that wasn't really used, and, you know, filming sex stuff there, all that fun jazz. And then Pearl is who Pearl is, the old woman in X. Why is she still stuck there? What type of person is she to be jealous of Maxine in X? And also the type of person to stay on their farm, and Maxine's not the type to stay on the farm or in the nest, per se. So they're two different types of people, and Maxine really cements her as a different person than Pearl or anyone, really. She's hardened, she's awesome, she's survived tragedy, and she's famous in Hollywood. That's something that Pearl doesn't have, and therefore Maxine's going to be satisfied with her life. And I like this trilogy a lot. You should definitely check out the trilogy. But this movie, I think also, it could work standalone. You just gotta know that the video that they're using to blackmail Maxine in this is footage from when Pearl massacred the entire porn production crew except for Maxine. So that's all you gotta know. Everything else, I think you can watch this as a standalone. So I'm gonna give this movie, let's say, solid 7.7 out of 10. If you like this review, watch another one on the platform you like, said $20 Dinos at patreon.com/ASEPresents. Support the daily grindiness by going to this link tree. It really helps for the daily grind of all them daily movies. So go here. And until next time, in Salad Saw, I'll see you later, my sour croutons and bacon bits. And I'm gonna go off to Los Angeles, specifically Hollywood, because that is where Maxine is at, and I want to meet her. Adios.